Good evening and welcome to the regular City Council meeting for the City of Bella Vista, Monday, September the 26th. We will start with the invocation from Pastor Fink from the famous Cookie Walk Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right, let's pray. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, I just want to remind you I love you and I'm so glad that you're my God. Lord, you are an incredible, loving God, and I just thank you for all that you've provided for us here in Bella Vista. And I ask for your anointing, your favor to rest upon this council, upon our city government, and anybody that has anything to do with making Bella Vista a great place to live. May your favor rest upon us. Give us the ability to make decisions, give us clarity of thought, give us clarity of communication, and give us the heart to serve the people. So be with our leaders tonight as they make those decisions. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please, Mr. Jertson.
Alderman Morgan.
Here.
Alderman Flynn.
Here.
Alderman Anderson.
Here.
Alderman King. Whoops, excuse me. Alderman Wozniak.
Here.
Alderman Wilson is absent.
Thank you. Citizen input, Mr. Bill Meskel.
Yes.
It's your turn, sir.
Oh, I go first?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, council people, aldermen, for letting me speak tonight. It's in regards to RVs. Under your section 2636, about parking RVs, trailers, and whatnot, they have to be screened, parked on either hard surface or gravel. What I'm asking is to look into, to add to all the, whatever you call the things that, provisions or whatever, add to that we can be able to park our RV at the house during camping season. Okay, the question is camping season, where do you start? We'd start in April, run through October. That gives the person that owns the camper time, instead of having to run, if you have it stored, to bring it back, find a place to put it. You can't park it on the street, you get in trouble. So if you park it so you can get it loaded, make sure everything is working, make sure ice box is working, make sure your propane's working before you take it out to go camping and you run into problems. So if you have it at the house, you can do your maintenance work that you need to have done, and it's just like getting ready to go on a vacation. You have your car parked at home. You want to be able to pack it at your leisure before you go so you don't forget anything. I know that it says about screening. When you try to screen an RV that is so tall, it's kind of, you can screen the bottom part, but you're still going to see the top part. So to me, you're still going to see your RV. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Moving on to the approval of the minutes of the August 22nd meeting. Are there any errors, omissions?
Recommend approval as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
We'll just do it by show of hands. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Moving on to the financial reports, we have both July and August. For those of you in the audience, the summary sheet is available on the back page for the month of August. Our controller or treasurer was away on vacation, and so that's why we have 2 months to approve. First of all, we'll start with July of 2016. Are there any comments? I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
We'll do a show of hands again. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Moving on to the August. Is there any discussion on the August financials? A motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Show of hands. Favor? Opposed? Same sign. Thank you. motion to approve the finance report, what's that?
That's that.
Was that in twice?
Just did.
That's what you just did. Right, okay.
Oh,
Everything- Okay.
One question.
Sir,
Do we need to do something with the special
I was just thinking that the
meeting?
minutes of the special
Minutes, or is
meeting-
that next month?
Oh,
Well, they're not ready yet, so you can approve them next month.
Okay.
Alrighty, a motion to suspend the rules and read all proposed ordinances and resolutions on the agenda by title only.
I so move.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Jertson?
Okay, roll call vote. Alderman Anderson,
Yes.
Alderman Flynn,
Yes.
Alderman Morgan,
Yes.
Alderman Wozniak,
Yes.
carried 4-0.
Thank you. The first piece of business is an ordinance amending Section 20-6 juvenile curfew of the Bella Vista City Code to clarify and provide for constitutional mandated exceptions to a violation, declaring an emergency and for other purposes. Counselor, any words of wisdom?
I requested the mayor have this placed on the agenda for your consideration. As you know, I'm your city prosecutor, in addition to my other hats. And so we have been seeing nothing dramatic, but a few more juvenile curfew violations come up in the last couple of months. I think that could be attributed to the summer months, really. But in any event, it caused me to go back and look at our ordinance. And in reviewing that, I felt like there needed to be some clarifications, and we need to clarify some legally mandated constitutional defenses that people have as it relates to any potential violation of a juvenile curfew. It doesn't change anything about the heart of the curfew. In other words, Sunday through Thursday, 11 p.m. to 6 a.m., Friday night, Saturday night, midnight to 6 a.m. That's when under age 18 are subject to the curfew. If you look at your draft in front of you, and we've provided for most of these in our existing ordinance, but there are a couple of them I believe we need to add as far as what are not violations. One would be, and again, no particular order, some of these, like I said, we've already accounted for. If you're with a responsible adult at least 21 years of age, it's okay. If you are at work or traveling directly to or from work, even though you're under 18, that's permissible. If the person is at an activity that is supervised by adults and sponsored by the city, a civic organization, a property owners association, a public or private school, or any entity that takes responsibility for the person, or the person is traveling directly to or from such activity to a place of residence. So, in other words, supervised activities by adults are permitted. One thing we don't account for, which this includes, is if the person is involved in a trip in interstate commerce. That's a federally mandated requirement. You do have a right to interstate travel, not subject to a curfew. If there is a requirement to leave the residence because of an emergency, that's protected. Also, if the person is engaged in any activity that's protected by the First Amendment, free speech or religion. So in other words, if there's an overnight church function, that would be included. That's not an all-exclusive list, but it is the sort of thing that would be included. If they're having a late night pamphlet get together to hand out for political reasons or something like that the next day, that's the sort of thing that would be permitted. And then the final exception would be if that person is an emancipated juvenile. In other words, they are legally an adult even though they are under the age of 18. So those are the exceptions in addition to providing for some clarity. That's what this does.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I do. On the interstate commerce, could I have a little more clarity? What's the difference between commerce and going to see grandma and grandpa in another state?
Okay, well, you have asked a question that we spend about 2 months on in law school as to what interstate commerce is in terms of the U.S. Constitution. Let me, how can I summarize this quickly? If you are traveling interstate, in other words, and this might happen, we're on the border, but someone's traveling from Arkansas into Missouri, and they are a juvenile alone, and they're heading back to Missouri, and they're driving a car interstate, that necessarily would not be a violation. The reason for that is that the federal courts have determined that that conduct is constitutionally protected, at least some of the circuits have. And so whenever you find these juvenile curfews, it's a rare circumstance, I understand, we have to account for that. We couldn't hold someone in violation of a juvenile curfew if they were headed to another state.
What makes that commerce?
Well, it's anything that...
Maybe I don't have the right definition.
Okay, well,
of commerce.
interstate, well, Congress has the authority to regulate interstate commerce pursuant to the U.S. Constitution. That's Article 1, Section 8. Most of what Congress does, and when it relates the conduct of people, is because of their connection to interstate commerce in doing it. Wire fraud is against the federal law because that wire exists in an interstate situation. So it's a means by which the federal government has been able to exercise a great deal of authority over the conduct which typically would be governed by state law. So when you say what is interstate commerce, that is a very broad thing. The television signals that we have may be broadcast. I don't know if they're broadcast or not. The telephone we pick up and use, those are all things that are used in interstate commerce. Now that's not an exception. They have to be traveling in this particular circumstance. It's not particularly related to their conduct. It's related to their travel in interstate commerce. So if they're going from one state to another, that's all this touches on. Okay.
I'll quit there.
Aren't you glad you didn't go to law school?
Yes, I am.
All righty, any other comments? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to suspend the rules and move to third and final.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. So we're voting on a motion to suspend the rules and move to third and final.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jertson?
Okay. Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Alderman Wozniak.
Yes.
Alderman Flynn.
Yes.
Alderman Morgan.
Yes,
Carried.
Thank you. Third and final reading. Amending Section 20-6 Juvenile Curfew of the Bella Vista City Code to clarify and provide for constitutionally mandated exceptions to a violation, declaring an emergency, and for other purposes. Any discussion? Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Any further
All right.
debate?
Any further debate? Wayne?
Alderman Morgan.
yes,
Alderman Flynn.
Yes.
Alderman Wozniak.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Carried, 4-0.
Thank you. And then finally, I'd entertain a motion to declare an emergency.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Wayne?
Alderman Flynn.
Yes.
Alderman Wozniak.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Alderman Morgan.
yes,
Carried, 4-0.
Thank you. The next is an ordinance waiving the requirements of formal competitive bidding and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a contract with the Bella Vista Animal Shelter, Inc. in the amount of $18,000 per year, plus $100 per dog, $50 per cat fees for the calendar year 2017 and for other purposes. This is something we do every year as we get ready for the budget. Is there any discussion?
This is the same as the current rate?
Yes, sir. John?
My understanding is the total cost, the city's maybe around 70,000 or so, is that right?
It depends on the number of animals. For example, last month was $4,500,
Yeah.
and that was a pretty high month.
Oh, okay, pretty high amount.
Yeah. Anything else? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to suspend the rules and move to third and final reading.
so moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Then we'll vote on the motion to suspend the rules and move to third and final. Mr. Jertson?
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Alderman Wozniak.
Yes.
Alderman Morgan.
Yes,
Alderman Flynn.
Yes.
Carried, 4-0.
Third and final reading, waiving the requirements of formal competitive bidding and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a contract with Bella Vista Animal Shelter, Inc. in the amount of $18,000 per year, plus $100 per dog and $50 per cat fees for calendar year 2017 and for other purposes. Discussion?
Recommend approval as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
Any further discussion?
we're very fortunate to have our animal
We are.
service.
We are. Anything else? Mr.
Okay.
Jertson?
Alderman Flynn.
Yes.
Alderman Wozniak.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Alderman Morgan.
Yes,
Carried, 4-0.
Thank you. The next is an ordinance amending the Bella Vista City Code to enact Section 2-347, collection of fines and costs in district court to fulfill state law requirements to designate a responsible party for the collection of fines and costs assessed in district court and for other purposes. Counselor?
We have requested that you all pass this ordinance. It is mandated by state law that the city designate the primary entity which is responsible for collection of fines and costs assessed in district court on our cases. What you have in front of you is a copy, basically, of what the city of Bentonville has adopted since we use their court. That would be the same process that we use. And so it designates the Benton County District Court Division II Bentonville Department as the entity with primary responsibility for the collection of fines and costs assessed in district court. This changes nothing in relation to how we currently do business and just as a compliance issue with state law.
Questions? All righty. I'd entertain a motion to suspend the rules and move to third and final reading.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Discussion? Mr. Jurtson?
All right. Alderman Morgan.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Alderman Flynn.
Yes.
Alderman Wozniak.
Yes.
Carried, 4-0.
Thank you. Third and final, amending the Bella Vista City Code to enact Section 2-347, collection of fines and costs in district court to fulfill state law requirements to designate a responsible party for the collection of fines and costs assessed in district court and for other purposes. Motion to approve.
So-
moved. Second.
Thank you. Further discussion? Mr. Jurtson?
All right. Alderman Morgan.
Yes.
Alderman Flynn.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Alderman Wozniak.
Yes.
Carried, 4-0.
Thank you. We'll move into the resolutions of the evening, the first of which is amending the 2016 annual city budget to appropriate $216,000 from city reserves for the cash purchase of a 2016 ambulance for the fire department. If you remember, this was in the budget, and we also purchased a new fire truck this year. However, we were going to borrow for the fire truck, but the ordinance ran out of time because the fire truck was delayed, so we paid cash for the fire truck. Now we're going to pay cash for the ambulance. Chief, is it still the end of November? Do you think it? Okay. All righty, any questions at all? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Jurtson?
All right. Alderman Flynn.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Alderman Wozniak.
Yes.
Alderman Morgan.
Yes.
Carried, 4-0.
Thank you. The next is a resolution expressing the support of the Bella Vista City Council regarding the location of a department of the Benton County District Court in the city. Mr. Kelly?
This is a resolution we've requested you consider before we take any steps going forward to see whether this is feasible. As we just discussed, our tickets, our misdemeanor offenses and our traffic violations and our code enforcement are all filed in the Bentonville Division, in Bentonville District Court, which is technically Benton County District Court Division 2. I'll save all that technicality and just say Bentonville District Court. And so that's where our tickets are filed. We pay, by agreement, right now for this year, $8,700 per month toward operational expenses of the court. In addition to that, we pay a percentage, and I don't have that number in front of me, toward the judge's salary, and that's over and above the $8,700. The $8,700 is what we pay for our participation in that court, and there's a ratio that goes into the total cases and as to how that number is calculated. The judge's salary, that's an issue really determined by state law and by the state. The county pays a portion of that. The city of Bentonville pays a portion of that. The state pays a portion of that, as well as, I believe, Pea Ridge and Cave Springs, which are the two other cities that judge hears cases in. We do not have the ability, by state law, to hold court in Bella Vista with the same judge. There was a story in the newspaper talking about hiring a judge. We cannot hire a judge and are not talking about hiring a judge. What we're talking about is, just like Sulphur Springs, just like Cave Springs, like Pea Ridge, to have a department of the district court which would allow the city of Bella Vista to hold court in Bella Vista with the very same judge except we would be providing a facility as well as a court clerk and whatever type of equipment and staffing might be needed in years to come. So there is a commitment from the city of Bella Vista in terms of location, space, and labor potentially into the future. If we had our own Department of District Court, and we're talking about 2 or more years down the road, then we would not be paying the $8,700 to Bentonville. That would be funding that could be used for our funding of our court, if we had one. Because this is an issue that is dictated by state law, and because we're a relatively new city, even though we're close to 10 years old now, and a lot of these changes came about as a result of a Constitutional Amendment 80, which came about here 12, 13 or more years ago. We weren't really in a position, because we were in unincorporated portions of the county, our cases were heard in Bentonville already, and it just kind of stayed that way as we became a city. Now that we're a city, we estimate we're close to 30,000 people that live in the city of Bella Vista. We're several miles across. I can't exactly tell you how many. I'm sure the police department could. And right now, if you get a ticket out in the Highlands and you want to appear, you've got to drive all the way down to South Bentonville to have your case heard. You go to the Bentonville Police Department to pay your ticket. And so it seems like perhaps moving forward that in a city our size, which is roughly equivalent to El Dorado or Van Buren, we need to be able to provide for justice. And so one of the thoughts was that for the amount of money we're paying toward the existing court, that goes a long way toward what we might need. So before we take steps to ask our legislators or to ask the administrative office of the courts, which is the state court office that kind of coordinates these sorts of things, before we take steps to say we're interested, we want to look at doing this, if there's not really a willingness to potentially move forward from the council, we'd like to know that up front. So if we're happy with the way things are, then we'll know that and we won't pursue it. If you think that's something we want to do, then we'd like to know that, because even if we want to do something 2 years down the road or more down the road, those things need to get started. So that's why this is in front of you.
Question, sir?
Is this irreversible? In
No.
other words, this is just a letter of intent. If it doesn't work out or the cost is,
It's
in
an
our mind, excessive, we can back out.
This is a resolution expressing an opinion of support.
Okay?
If we get into this, the mayor's certainly in charge of all this, but if we get into this and we decide this is just going to cost us more money than it's going to be worth to us, I think there's going to be some serious financial things looked at before we get to the legislative issue of passing a bill to create it. Then you're not committing yourself at this point. Now, it may end up, and I don't know if that got circulated, and if it didn't, I apologize. I can send it to you later. There were some financials that were provided to me from from the administrative office of the courts, showing some budgets for some roughly equivalent size caseloads in cities, but it's not an apples to apples comparison. It's very hard to look at these things and say we can get a good idea. So much has to relate to structure, how much we're going to pay in rent. Are we going to build a police department in the next 5 years? Would it have a courtroom attached to it? Are we going to have expenses? If we hire a clerk, would that be someone that was part-time court, part-time police? There's all sorts of things you could factor in, but especially if you're going to think about hiring police personnel into the future that could defray some of the actual justice expense related to the court. I can tell you it will not increase it should not have any impact on our payment of the judge's salary, because our caseload number will be the same if they're heard in Bella Vista or if they're heard in Bentonville, so that's not going to particularly change. What could potentially change is obviously that $8,700, and we are at the city of Bentonville's mercy to an extent, because if they decide they need more staff, then we're going to be committed to paying a pro rata portion of that, and we're not really going to have much say in what they hire over there.
Understand. My real concern is the judge, and I hear you say that it probably will not increase the cost, but if I understand correctly, the current judge is thinks he's reasonably close to top of the line as to what he can handle. And if he travels a little bit of time, will that throw him over the thing? And will we be in a brand new, another judge?
Well, we're
So
not talking
all I'm
about-
saying is I'd like another chance to take a look at it somewhere downstream when we have some more concrete numbers.
You will.
And not be tied into it.
Or if you, there's no connection between this and the number of cases the Bella Vista Police Department will file. Just because there's a court being heard here doesn't mean more people are going to break the law.
Well, I understand that. I understand that.
So it doesn't mean that the judge's caseload is going to go up. They're just going to be heard in a different place.
But the judge's travel time is going to go up.
Well,
He gets paid for that too, I'm sure.
he
coming
gets a
out here.
salary, so he's paid, and I mean, he's going to get, the judge will be paid, I promise.
I understand you're telling me I'll get another chance to look at it, so it's fine.
Alderman?
I do have a question. Assuming we go ahead and approve this resolution, you're saying it could be 2 years before we enact anything?
Well, when I say that, the legislature is going to be meeting come first of the year. So if there's a state board, district court, resource assessment board, and they meet prior to the regular session to make any recommendations to the General Assembly regarding courts. So what I would anticipate is if you are expressing support to this, we would make a statement to that board in some way saying, we're interested in looking at this. We want to work with you to figure out what it may cost or not. And I want you to look at the size city we are and the fact that we're in the top 10 in the state and we don't have a court. Sulphur Springs, they got a couple hundred people over there. They've got a court. So,
So this could actually escalate?
but what would
quicker
happen?
than 2 years?
What would happen is this: if this resource assessment board, they could say we want to look at it again in 2 years, or they could say we're ready to recommend something now. In which case there could be a bill put before the legislature this coming year, but it would not be uncommon at all for that to not take effect for another year or two down the road. So it wouldn't be effective until 2019 or 2020 or however long we thought we might need or anything like that. It's not going to be an immediate thing by any means because it takes time to set up, it takes time to plan, finance, and all that sort of thing.
The wheels of justice.
The wheels of justice.
It's part of operating the government is providing for justice. It is not a moneymaker. It is not, it's not going to be really, it's something we have to do to run government is to provide for justice, I think. And we've got people that are the other part of this, I want to make sure I state this too. We have 1 day a month where our cases are heard at trial. And that's in an afternoon, and it is, there's 1 month of the year we don't have it at all. So there are 11 days of the year we're able to have trial down there on every case that goes to trial. And there have been times when nearly our entire patrol police force has been in the city of Bentonville at that time waiting to go to trial, where we've had situations where command staff have had to be ready to answer calls here in Bella Vista because there wasn't anybody. So we may still have 1 day a month, but it's up here, but our police officers will be in Bella Vista and able to get on the radio and hop in the car and go run somewhere. I mean, that's a concerning thing when we're starting to have that kind of a load crammed into that short of a period of time where we're having to have so many officers there at once. So that there is a safety factor there.
All right, thank you. Any other-
Recommend approval as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Jurtson?
Okay. Alderman Morgan.
Yes.
Alderman Flynn.
Yes.
Alderman Wozniak.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Carried, 4-0.
Thanks. The next resolution is approving amounts of liens to be certified to the Benton County Tax Collector against certain real properties as a result of grass cutting expenses and abatement of other nuisances by the city of Bella Vista and for other purposes. This pops up, it comes out of Chris's department, where every year there are folks in the city who decide they're not going to mow their lawns and take care of them, so we hire contractors and go in and get it cleaned up.
Mayor, this is a resolution we need to conduct a public hearing before we pass it. This relates to one piece of property owned by Retha Williams at 13 Grisham Drive. So, Mayor, you really at this point need to open a public hearing if anyone desires to speak on this particular issue.
Okay, so we'll go into Public hearing. Does anybody wish to speak?
Okay, you can close.
Then we can close the public hearing. Is there any discussion or questions for Chris? Sir?
So there was just the one case?
That's what you did. I don't know if we had to notice something. We talked about it.
Alderman, we will have several other properties that we are in the collection process at this point. There was a transition in ownership that we were alerted to, so we wanted to certify this particular property sooner rather than later so that the current property owner was aware of it and could notify any, do any disclosures that they needed to in that real estate transaction.
Okay, thank you.
This public hearing was announced.
Notice was provided to the recipient of the invoice that's provided in your packet, bottom of the invoice.
Other questions? All righty, motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Alderman Wozniak.
Yes.
Alderman Flynn.
Yes.
Alderman Morgan.
Yes.
Carries 4-0.
Thank you. The next resolution, amending the 2016 annual city budget to authorize an additional part-time employee library position, 16 hours per week maximum. For those of you who perhaps are not close to the library is, to quote a phrase, going gangbusters. The year-over-year teen circulation is up 175%. Children is up 125%. The summer reading program was up 75%. It is very full and very busy, and our library director has requested an additional part-time employee to help with the load. It's actually kind of a nice problem to have that the library is being used so heavily. Are there any questions at all?
Recommend approval as presented.
Second.
Thank you.
All right. Alderman Flynn.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Alderman Morgan.
Yes.
Alderman Wozniak.
Yes.
Carries 4-0.
Thank you. The next resolution is authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a contract with Luttrell Construction in an amount not to exceed $178,190 for construction of a salt sand storage building for the street department, and authorizing termination of a prior contract with a prior non-licensed contractor. You may remember we had this up in front of council once before, and then we discovered that the person that won the award or the contract actually was not licensed here in the state and had no desire to be licensed in the state. Therefore, we had to go back out to bid one more time, and it actually came in $5,000 cheaper. And I think the suggestion had been made at the work session, perhaps we should bid it again, and we might get another $5,000 off. But nevertheless, this is a building that we do need to build. There is a federal mandate under the stormwater. Is it called a protection program? Is it just the stormwater? There we are. And all the sand and salt has to be undercover on a hard surface such as asphalt or concrete floor with a stem wall. So this is what we are proposing to build up just behind the new street building. Any discussion at all? I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
All right. Alderman Wozniak.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Alderman Flynn.
Yes.
Alderman Morgan.
Yes.
Carries 4-0.
Thank you. The next resolution, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a contract with Marion Company LLC in the amount not to exceed $87,950 for the construction of a heavy equipment shed for the street department. This too has been planned. This is going to be built at the back of the new street department, and will be open on at least one side, and it's more to keep the heavy equipment safe from the elements. This went to bid, and the successful bidder was Marion.
Recommend approval as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, Alderman Morgan,
Yes.
Alderman Flynn,
Yes.
Alderman Wozniak.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Carries 4-0.
Thank you. The next resolution authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to enter into a contract amendment with Allied Services, LLC, DBA Republic Services of Bella Vista regarding solid waste collection and disposal services and for other purposes. This is, as we discussed at the work session, the transfer of the billing away from the POA and moving it over to Republic. It also talks about the use of standardized polycarts, and I won't take all of us through the discussion we had, but if there are additional questions on a point of personal privilege, I would ask that Ms. Fagan, who represents Republic and who is also a Bella Vista citizen, be permitted to answer your questions. We did put a collection process example on a piece of paper for you to have a look at tonight. For those of you watching this evening, this is also available on the back table. And I think I'll leave it at that and just open it up for questions. Oh, okay.
I did speak to Ms. Fagan before the meeting, and I have two concerns that I addressed to her. Number one is for my personal self, we would not be able to keep even the 65-gallon container in our garage, and because we live on one of those circle streets, it would be visible from the street outside our house. And I don't know if that is a concern to the city or not, but that would be our circumstance, and I'm sure we're not the only ones that would fall into that category. And the other thing I discussed with her was my concern for the townhouses, and if you'd like to address that, she gave a very good answer.
Currently, at the townhouses, we're doing two different kinds of services. Some of them have the commercial dumpsters, and some of them have the corrals. So the commercial dumpsters would remain the same, and where the corrals are today, we would do individually, by stop, take a look at those and see which ones we could convert over to commercial dumpsters. We'd like to kind of get away from the corrals because it's become just a dumping ground where everybody just puts everything in it. So they would either have the polycarts or a commercial dumpster.
I guess my first issue would be to the city, if there is a concern about those containers being, by the driveway or visible from the street. Because I don't know that we could do anything about that.
Mr. Sunnison?
The city does have a nuisance ordinance that prohibits the placement of trash receptacles out 12 hours before or after pickup. As you know, we kind of do our city in waves of collection, and so that's always a challenge for code enforcement, not to mention neighbor complaints. So we would need to do, I would imagine, some sort of ordinance amendment in order to alleviate that concern.
Well, my concern is not that I would put it down on the street anytime
Right.
soon, but it would be by the side of my house and visible from the
Right.
street.
I
Is there a-
I think the best way to approach that is legislatively as far as amending the nuisance code.
Thank you.
I can tell you this, Alderman Horgan, just having your can by your house doesn't violate anything. If it's out on the street, that's when it violates any city ordinance. Now, of course, if it were to have just, I know you don't do this at all, but unfortunately, we do have places in town where there might be just piles of trash all around it and stinky and all this kind of stuff. It could become a health situation where the city would take action on that. But just a can there up against your garage there by your house in and of itself would not be a violation of the city ordinance, right?
It's not going to look nice.
Well, that's
Progress.
Alderman Anderson, did you have a question?
Yeah, the question I had dealt with closed accounts and collection agency process. Do you have any feel, I'm sure you've done this in Republic several places, maybe in the not too distant past where you've changed over to a system? Trash in Bella Vista is only second to snow removal in the amount of people it affects and the kind of activity we're gonna have. Do you have any idea in your process here at the end of 90 days what percentage you would expect to close accounts on? My concern is you're going to turn it back to the city. It's then going to be a city problem. It's going to be Chris's problem and his code enforcement folks. We can only issue so many tickets.
Right.
And we can only process so many through a court system that already, you heard our lawyer indicate that some days of the month, he doesn't have enough people to take care of. Is there any chance that we're going to get into that kind of a situation? And if so, is there a way that you could move the collection agency process up sooner in the overall thing before it gets to the city?
I understand your concern. The collection process is going to take place from the minute the bill is late, but through letters, phone calls, and then also they will suspend the services eventually as outlined in here. We know in the beginning, because this is going to be new for everybody, the first quarter, we may have more people than normal that have not paid, just because either they didn't hear about it or they didn't realize it. They got the Republic letter or bill and just tossed it. We realize that. I reached out to several different states in which they do this same type of service, besides the ones that I manage. And in counties, even where it's not mandatory, they have less than 3% that they suspend. So as far as the bad debt goes, once the suspension happens, the bad debt is another 30, 45 days before they're actually closed.
3% doesn't sound too bad. We can probably live with that. I heard a number of 10%, which did upset me a little bit. 1,200 people would be a lot of tickets to issue.
Right. Well, and the key on our end is to make sure that once we suspend them, we're not picking their trash up.
Yeah.
Because that 90% of the time that generates a phone call because they wonder why their trash wasn't picked up.
Okay.
Alderman Wozniak, I believe you had a question?
No, I'm good.
You're good? Sir, you're okay? Becky, you all right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hearing no further discussion, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Wayne?
Okay. Alderman Morgan.
Yes.
Alderman Flynn.
Yes.
Alderman Wozniak.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Carries 4-0.
Thank you. The next resolution establishing residential and commercial rates for solid waste trash collection in the city. You can see the new rates are laid out in your package. The residential increase is 33 cents a month, works out to about 2.4%. And then you can see the various commercial rates laid out as well, depending on the size of the dumpster. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
I know what the residential rate is compared to what it used to be. Has the commercial ones, have they changed much?
Yes, they've gone up 3%.
Okay.
How much?
3%.
3%.
Yes. Anything else? I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Mr. Wayne?
All right. Alderman Flynn.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Alderman Morgan.
Yes.
Alderman Wozniak.
Yes.
Carries 4-0.
And the last piece of business is a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a lease agreement with Blue Mountain Storage in the amount of $122 per month for purposes of obtaining climate control storage space for the police department. We do have Captain Cook here this evening if there are any questions. Captain, I imagine this goes for DNA type of storage, is it? Because it has to be kept under a climate control condition?
There's some things that we have to have climate control, but we do have a lot of other things.
if I could be heard. The reason you have to see this, it's $122. State law requires council to approve any lease agreements, so this is a mini storage lease, and so that's why you have to see it. It's a pretty small thing.
It's a lease that we've had for quite a few years.
We had that space for several years out there. Initially, when we had it, it was free when we were doing the child parties. But as we've grown, and some of our cases, we've had to extend to be another thing.
Yes, sir.
What kind of square footage is this?
Captain?
Roughly?
Isn't it the same one we had before, or is it a bigger one? It's a bigger one. It's a bigger one. We used to have a garage thing that opened on both ends. Garage, single car garage, like a car and a half, but it opened on both ends.
Oh, that's the same one. I was thinking of the one we had first that just opened on the one end.
Okay.
I would say it's roughly, 16 by 30.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the captain? Entertain a motion to approve. Thanks, Captain.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Wayne?
All right, Alderman Morgan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Alderman Flynn.
Yes.
Alderman Wozniak.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Carried, 4-0.
Meetings and announcements. The next city council work session will be Monday, October 17th, 2016, 5:30 PM in the City Hall Conference Room. The next regular meeting of city council, Monday, October 24th, 2016, at 6:30 PM, right here in the Legion Hall. The Planning Commission work session will be Thursday, September 29th at 4:30 in the City Hall Conference Room. Planning Commission regular meeting will be October the 10th, 2016, at 5:30 in the City Hall Conference Room. If there's no further business, enjoyed the debate, and we are adjourned.
Good
Half an
job.
hour, not food and company yet. Half an hour, maybe.
Enjoy the debate.
Yeah.